Dan Taft, born Daniel Robert Taftowitz, grew up in a modest middle-class Long Island town as the star of his small neighborhood. He was known all over Huntington for appearing in one of the highest-grossing motion pictures of all time, Home Alone, as Macaulay Culkin's stunt double. You could see the side and back of his head in 2 scenes, but no one could see the ego inside his head start to grow at an out-of-control pace. This is the true story of a mildly popular internet star. Shortly after his role in Home Alone, Dan decided it was time to start going on auditions, and he ended up booking the very first one he tried out for, what he thought was a nationwide commercial promoting the Jewish religion.
Congratulations, Adam. Mazel tov.
Little did he know, the nation they were referring to was Cuba, and due to the trade embargo, Dan couldn't even receive a copy of his performance. I nailed that role, and it sucked that I couldn't see it, but I knew it was just the beginning. Sadly, this was the beginning of the end. Dan started puberty, which ruined his chances of landing any more child roles. The adorable young boy Huntington once loved was now an unbookable goon. Dan was immediately dropped from his agency, which was a huge blow, as he found them in an ad in the back of a newspaper saying, "We represent anyone." He was at an awkward phase, and after years under the spotlight, he attempted to assimilate back into society as a normal kid. The kids at school used to call me all types of names like Macaulay and Doofus Face, so I took all my anger and I focused it on the basketball courts. The problem was, though, that Dan wasn't very good at basketball. He barely made the team and spent 2 full seasons riding the bench. Some people even say that if there was more footage of Dan on the basketball court, he could have landed the worst basketball player ever role, but it turned out to be yet another role he could not get. I submitted my videotape of basketball footage to Hidden Track TV, but they claimed that it was ruined. Who knows what happened there?
I ruined the tape. He was crushed when he didn't land the role, but I wasn't trying to be the wife of the worst basketball player ever. I mean, I had much greater expectations for myself, at least back then.
This only made things worse. Dan then resorted to drugs to escape his problems, causing him to lash out at society and attempt to start a rap career. Jumped into my car, I went to the bar, I didn't know how far we would get. After several years of putting out stereotypical white boy freestyle tapes, Dan gave up the rap dream with only 1 copy sold, which was bought by his mother.
Oh, I didn't buy one of Dan's rap tapes. What?
With nowhere else to turn, Dan reached out to close friend Adam Schleichkorn, CEO of Hidden Track TV, and the man responsible for some of the best videos in the history of the internet, including this one that you're currently watching. Schleichkorn, though, had mixed feelings about bringing Dan aboard.
He was a freaking stunt double in Home Alone. He doesn't know anything about acting. Pretty much right when I called him, he said, "Hells yeah, kid, let's do this." When he first called me, I pretty much flat out told him no. But then he started whining and crying and stuff, and I had to give him a shot. I think of Adam as a brother to me. I think of Dan as somewhat of an acquaintance.
Dan finally received his first role as the star of The Ham Attack, which totals over 350,000 views across the internet. While the video was a success, the public lashed out at Dan on the comment boards.
They were writing stuff like LOL at his face. LOL at my face?
While Dan originally thought he proved himself with this clip, he knew he had to follow it up with something strong. He again began to beg Schleichkorn relentlessly to get him another role. During this time, he started making wild claims, such as saying he's a great actor and that he invented the internet.
I don't know how he thinks he's a good actor. I mean, we woke him up by throwing ham at him. There's literally no acting involved in that whatsoever. But the bit did work, so I figured, let's go with this.
Dan continued his pursuit and landed another major role as a star in The Cheese Incident, which happened to appear on The Maury Povich Show Extra in the main page of YouTube, to name a few.
This was a great follow-up for me. It showed everybody my true potential to be a serious thespian. It was another clip of him getting woken up. I mean, wait, did he just say thespian? As great as it was, I didn't want to be typecasted as the ham and cheese guy, so it was back to the drawing board.
Dan started hounding Schleichkorn again for work. While none of his calls were returned, he did get word from what he calls his inside sources that the voiceover spot for the very first Worst Basketball Player Ever video was still available.
Worst basketball player ever.
Little did he know, Hidden Track TV merely posted a Craigslist ad, which his wife, Tiffany, stumbled across. Schleichkorn, though, had just about enough of Dan.
I had just about enough of Dan.
The clip became an international hit, but the huge ego which Dan had once before was quickly starting to re-emerge again, one more time. He felt as if he could get away with anything, until that abruptly changed when he was arrested on a drug possession charge.
So I'm coming out. I was an internet star, and if there's one thing I know, it's that charges don't stick against stars.
Unfortunately, these charges did stick, and Dan was sentenced to a mental institution.
No!
Dan fell into a period of poor mental health, including many episodes of paranoid delusions, which were not quite the type of episodes he had in mind for his future.
Are the cops here? Is my heart beating fast?
Being the good person he is, Adam Schleichkorn paid for Dan's mental institution bills. After a short 18 months, Dan was able to be released into society and get back on his feet. When he came home, his biggest role yet was waiting for him.
The asylum was like a vacation for me, but now more than ever before, I was ready to get back in front of that camera.
This role was in the hit, The Showdown, a video which was featured on a popular website, garnering rave reviews. Dan was on top once again, although very briefly, as the feature only lasted one day. If that wasn't bad enough, Dan fell into another whirlwind of disaster when he started reading the comments. Not one comment was in Dan's favor, as literally 100% preferred the chef character over his. Dan took the negative comments to heart, and for a second time, he was sent back to the mental institution.
No!
After a few months, by a special request from his family, Dan became eligible for early release and made it out just in time to attend the YouTube gathering in New York City on 7707.
We flew all the way from Miami, Florida to New York City for this damn YouTube gathering. That was the last straw for Dan.
Not one person recognized Dan at the gathering, and he even put on a name tag. He tried causing a scene, yet it was met with no response.
Baba Booey! Baba Booey! Baba Booey!
Sadly, there's no happy ending to this story. For several weeks, Dan broke off all contacts with the outside world and is reportedly living in the woods somewhere.
Get out of here!
He does have internet access though, and does check all of his videos constantly, but has still been overheard talking about his next big break. Dan's recent work includes this very voiceover that you are hearing right now, which is a role he landed strictly because no one else wanted it. There's nothing more embarrassing than doing the voiceover for your own story.
Come on!
With conditions getting worse by the day, we ask you to lend Dan a helping hand and view and comment all of his videos before it's too late.